Hello and welcome to Upload, a program where we take our collective consciousness and upload it to your mind. On the left, sure, yeah, on the left, it's Bobby Del Rio. Sure, why not?
Hi.
And on the right is Todd Van Allen.
The only time you can never say that.
Exactly. And below me, but above me in esteem, is Lewis Taylor.
And my life matters, okay? My life matters.
Mine does not.
So I do want to talk about the police budget and what's happening with, defunding the movements about defunding the police all over the place. But, I was just thinking about, it's got to be hard because I'm not a big rap fan, right? So I don't really listen to a lot of it. Back in high school, I would listen to, Fight the Power, because it was in a movie, Do the Right Thing. So I liked it. But I do respect people who like rap, and a lot of my white friends like rap, and I'm not a big fan. So, but I think we should give like a blanket absolution. If you're in your car and you're a white person singing to some rap song you love, to sing along with the rap artists when that word happens. I think if you're in your car, nobody can hear you. Yep. It's okay. If you love the artist and you're just celebrating the song, it's okay, right? Or am I wrong?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, Elvis, I just want to start out. Elvis was a hero to most. He never meant shit to me.
Yeah. Straight out racist. Motherfuck him and John Wayne. You see?
Right. Yeah. You see,
I'm not that white, Bobby. I'm not that white.
There's been examples of white celebrities. Like I think there was a baseball player who was like an all-star a couple years ago. And they went through his tweets when he was 17. Mm-hmm. He posted rap lyrics because he liked rap, and the N-word was used on his Twitter account, but he was like quoting a rap song.
Right.
And he almost lost his career.
Now, can you, first of all, can any of us imagine what would have happened to us now if we had a Twitter account at the age of 17?
No. That's not. I would have said so much stuff about Ronald Reagan and apartheid.
One of the first things I ever did when Facebook came out is I'd read this like Stephen Colbert book. You see that one when it came out, the first one? It was just a hilarious book. And it was like writing in really small font, and it was making fun of old people who couldn't read the font. I just thought it was hilarious.
Right.
So on Facebook I wrote, "Hey, blind people, go fuck yourself."
Right.
And people did not like that joke. And then a friend of mine's wife worked for the blind, and then you can just imagine what happened. I was like, okay, don't do that again.
Yeah.
Right.
But on the other hand, with that though, I think it's very similar in the things that we said to people that did not find it appropriate. Because I think most of us, except for Bobby, came up in mainline, toxic masculinity, where guys were allowed to say shit to anyone. We got schooled a lot, right? Yeah. Especially coming into the arts. I got schooled endlessly because of the shit that would come out of my mouth.
What do you mean? You got schooled by whom?
Women, black folk from other cultures, on a multicultural level, people coming from other countries. It was like a constant barrage of, oh, fuck, I need to rethink how I think. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's changed.
No, I was just going to... Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to go back to Andrew's original point of the hip hop lyrics, which I will hum through in some states. There are some points where I just go, I honestly can't remember what goes here. If I'm going to go to Mike Judge's Office Space, and this sums up the white privilege argument of the whole thing entirely. And it's when Michael Bolton, not that Michael Bolton, the one in the movie, is in his car and he's singing along to gangster rap, and the full lyrics are in full display, and he's just hopping along and loving every second of it. And then he's in jammed up traffic, and this black guy, homeless fellow, is selling flowers or something to make some money. and you can see Michael stop singing and nervously go, and the hand creeps up to lock the door beside him.
Right. Yeah.
And that is every single white person who
Right.
says, how come I can't say the N-word in songs?
That's a good point. Like, I think, there is that you can celebrate Black culture, but what respect do you actually have of Black people? Like, there's an article about Wendy Mesley, who's had some disciplinary action because she used the N-word while talking, because she was quoting somebody else, and there was a Black person in the room. And to be honest, like, and this is me, and I could be totally wrong, and you can cancel me if you want, but if I'm that journalist in that room, and this is just me, I care less about whether she says the word, and I care more about my prospects as a journalist within the company to get advancement. You know what I mean? Like, what do?
Yeah, I'd cancel you.
Does she? You can cancel me all you want. Like, I mean, I wrote a play called. It was based on the Harlem Renaissance, and in the Harlem Renaissance, writers like Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes and Wallace Thurman, they lived in this place that they called the Hotel Niggerati. They thought it was funny. It's a
What?
They called it. They lived in this townhouse in New York, and it's not there anymore.
Bobby, he said the Hotel Nig. Boo!
Exactly. Yeah. And Todd gets canceled yet again. But so it's like, it was called the Hotel Niggerati because they saw themselves as being the Black literati of the time. And so I wrote this play, and one of the locations in the play is the Hotel Niggerati, and the stage manager had to say it over and over again. All right, starting from, please, we're going to location, the hotel. Is it? And she would look at me. It's like, is it okay to say it? I'm like, just say it. Come on, we got.
Yeah, but that's not the same situation as you described as the woman in the office when I guess it was another journalist popped off with the word. A lot of it depends on how you say it.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's showing that you have the freedom and the privilege to use it,
right?
Or are you innocently quoting someone? I don't think it's possible in our culture if a Black person is in the room to use that word with any sense of innocence.
It's funny because there's this sublimation aspect to it too, right? Like I remember I published a couple plays called Half Chinks Taking Over the World.
Right.
And I distinctly remember white people loved the title so much, and they would repeat it to me. It would be like, "I love your play, Half Chinks Taking Over the World." It's like they could finally say, and I spelled it with an X, right? Cool. And people
what are half chunks?
I don't know. It's like
but I remember like Asian friends of mine rip me a new fucking asshole because it's like, oh, what, you think you're Black? Like you think you're like the Asian N-word? That like it just became like a thing. So it's a complex issue,
Yeah.
I honestly though, like I have great respect for you, Louis. I have a great respect for you, Bobby. But honestly, like I think
I did not get mentioned there. I love that.
Exactly. Or I tell you,
Todd, you're on your own.
Exactly. Good luck. No, I think that if Wendy turned to the Black writer and said, okay, so we have to use this word, like, can we use it? Is it appropriate to use in this room and not? Like if Wendy gave that writer the respect to say, you're in power right now, you let us know what's appropriate and we'll go from there. And if the Black writer was like, use it, I don't care. Or if the Black writer was like, you know what, it makes me really uncomfortable, whatever. But if Wendy had given that person the power, then we wouldn't be talking.
Oh, well, that's a different story. I didn't realize that was the situation. So describe the scenario.
No. Like,
I'm not clear on it.
What I'm saying is the problem is that Wendy didn't talk to the Black writer. She didn't consult.
Oh, yeah.
She didn't give that person power. To me, the issue is power. The issue is, does that Black writer have any power in the organization, let alone in that room?
Right.
Well, I have been in situations where young white guys, drunk or otherwise, have used the word loudly and at the same time loudly ignoring me.
Right.
Right. So it's, for me, that's when I want to get old school and fuck a motherfucker up. I'm too old to do so. So I just look pissed and walk away. But it's done with a certain amount, with me being present.
Mm.
There's no innocence involved in that.
You know what, Lewis? I was in Blythe, Ontario. I was doing a show there, and there was like a 10-year-old kid, 10-year-old blonde kid on the corner, decided one day, I was walking by, he decided to call me nigger, and I turned and I said, what? He ran, I'm running after him, and as I'm getting close to catching him, I'm thinking to myself, Andrew, what are you doing? Is he going to beat the shit out of a 10-year-old? Like,
Optics.
let it go.
Optics.
and then the Blythe police sweep in,
Exactly.
right?
And then it just gets better from there.
The interviewing the kid and said, "Okay, so who robbed you, kid?" Well, it was a white guy. Oh, a black guy dressed as a white guy. Interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But
I
you know,
actually,
the rap
my-
lyrics argument is slightly different though, right? Because look, if someone just calls you the N word, or someone says whatever, the C word, I guess you would call it to me, whatever the slur is,
Yeah.
like it's egregious, it's obvious, it's wrong.
Mm.
But when somebody likes a song and you know, it's like, do you think that black rappers have a problem getting rich off white suburban kids buying their albums?
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
isn't
there's-
that kind of the point?
There's a
I
few
am.
Tribe Called Quest songs that when they come on the car, I have to skip ahead or roll up the windows because
Yeah.
it is just prevalent.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: like I had friends, I had black friends when I was growing up, where it was an adequate currency and an understanding that we all knew each other, that they would allow me a "What's up, my"
Yeah.
Right.
upon greeting, and it was fine and it was accepted. And it occurred to me one day that it's cool with us because they know in my heart there is nothing in there and we're doing this for the irony of the situation. But to anyone walking by,
Yeah.
that is not cool.
Yeah.
And then it can
Yeah.
spawn
Yeah.
the wrong message. So now, even though I would, I can find myself in situations where I'm given that purchase and I'm given that leeway because the understanding of who I am and what the context of the joke is. I don't go there anymore because, first of all, I'm too old for this shit. And secondly, the climate being what it is, people don't understand context anymore. We're arguing about putting on a mask, for Christ's sake. What hope do I have saying, but no, you don't understand. My friend and I have a long legacy of this ongoing joke that in the current climate is really and then having to explain what irony is. I'm just like, just hold up a picture of Dick Gregory's autobiography and just
Right.
leave. That's it.
There is a God, Andrew opened his mouth and I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead, Andrew. I'm old.
No, you poor guy. I was just going to say that I did work at Buddies in Bad Times in a lesbian show once, where all of the women, I was one of two guys there, and before the show started, they just had this chant using the C word. And
Okay.
they turned to me to repeat this chant, and I was just like, I know you're giving me permission, but that's so not, I'm a
Yeah.
feminist. I'm not supposed to call women that word. That's really harsh.
Or
Yes,
the
it's-
context, though.
Yeah.
Like,
It was to get ready for a show. So they were like
Yeah.
chanting the C word to get ready.
just over and over again.
It was a phrase that they wanted.
And
me to
you
say.
refused to bond with them. That's
I
interesting.
was just like,
okay.
my feminist side and my actor side was like, don't say it. Don't say it. Should I say it? I don't know.
If someone gives you permission, it's not like we are unfamiliar with the C word.
Mhm, yeah.
I mean, if someone is empowering that, because like the N word, it can be an incredibly empowering phrase, an incredibly empowering word, right? Owning your pussy, it's like, boom. But what's interesting is there's this Chinese rapper, East Asian rapper, it might be Korean, who uses the N word all the time because he grew up in the ghetto, surrounded by gangbangers, black gangbangers. And he feels he's part of the culture. He's gotten a lot of negative press from the East Asian liberal community, but he's, he has videos of him hanging out with his homies, and he's using the word, they're using the word, and he's like, these are my people, this is my culture. So yeah, it becomes interesting.
Now, the the issue of using that word, of course, is it has a lot to do with what's happening in the news these days, and also this is the worst segue ever, Bobby. Crap. Never mind. I know. I just splooged all over the place. Okay, so Toronto City Council. Toronto City Council has just voted.
Speaking of C words.
Speaking of words, here's another word.
Here's another word. Toronto City Council has voted in favor of a series of reforms. They have voted down the idea of cutting the police budget. What they have voted for is body cameras and a non-police response team for mental health calls. And I think, and personally, I think that's a great idea. Like, I was really concerned because I know that people are like, defund the police, which is great. But the police have been working really hard over the past 10 years, as I said, the police force has been reduced by 658 officers over the past 10 years. They have frozen, all pay raises have been frozen over the past however many years. A lot has been done to sort of curb spending on the police. And I think, however, now what's truly needed for accountability are body cameras. It's not going to stop police violence, but I think it's going to force accountability, and also a non-police, response unit for mental health issues. But what do you guys think?
Well, the C word I would have picked here was coward.
Right.
I think this was a missed opportunity to be able to start right placing a lot of the funds that are tied up in this budget. And I have a couple of like go-to counselors in Toronto that I still sort of follow, even though I no longer live in the city. So honestly, fuck them. But there is a couple of guys that I tend to follow and seem to be on the right side of the argument. And one of the things that I noticed was Councillor Josh Matlow was one of the I think the co-writers of the 10% reduction, if I'm not mistaken, if he didn't actually forward the motion himself. But what I haven't been able to follow up on is that he was actually against, if I have this right, he was actually against the cameras, which is one of the aspects, to your point, Andrew, that I actually agreed with. That is going to provide some sort of like, I don't know whether his issue was like that's just a larger expense that we can use elsewhere, or if he's seeing them as ineffective. But we are seeing more and more that body cams are actually providing large amounts of evidence for both sides of the arrests. So I think I'm with you, Andrew. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I still think the budget is overblown, and I think we should take some of the responsibilities that the police have had to sire without, like, when we're giving these guys hammers and telling them every problem's a nail, and we can't have that. So start getting counselors more money so that they can help things before they build up. And I think this, sadly, like, this was the best flashpoint opportunity we had to let's right size this, and now we can't. I think that opportunity is gone now, sadly.
Anybody else?
Okay, so I have two comments which are sort of questions with the same theme, right? And the theme is disconnect. So I posted a link also in our group about, there was like a protester with a megaphone the other day that was like fully saying abolish the police. And sometimes you hear that the defund the police movement is sort of recontextualized on liberal media, where they say, oh, it basically just means reform the police. And you get this really sort of like erudite response, but yes, we say defund the police, but it really is. And then people calm down, like, oh, and then on the microphone, there's somebody going, abolish the police. It's like, it's pretty clear that there's people who are pretty extreme about what they want, right? So there's clearly a disconnect between what's being done, what's being reported, and what's being said at these protests. Number two is that, and maybe anybody here can answer the question, particularly you, Andrew, because I know that you've done a lot of research and you've written all these plays about this issue in particular. But I guess my question is, if you're black in Canada, right, are your interactions with the police at the same level of sort of escalated violence as they are in the United States? Because it really just seems like being a black man in the U.S., it's like there's so many stories of incarceration and violence and murder, where in Canada, and I don't know if it's just the media, it just seems like very different.
It's underreported, so it's the same. And you know, I don't know what the percentages are per capita, but police officers still murder people of color. Police officers still abuse, and especially in the First Nations community, it is abysmal. It is standard practice for police officers to take a First Nations person in Winnipeg, and you know, if they're inebriated, drive them like miles out of the city and then drop them in a snowbank. If they die, fuck it, who cares? Like, wow. It's brutal here. And so for me, like, I feel very strongly that body cameras will force accountability. And also too, for those people who have mental health issues, we have to stop using the police. And the reason why we're using the police is because Mike Harris cut 6 hospitals. Okay, this is the other thing that drives me flipping crazy, because the left abandoned Bob Ray. I know I'm on this again. I know I'll shut up about it eventually.
No. I just love it. He's angry. He's using flipping.
Flipping Bob Ray was abandoned by the flipping left, who were like, "Oh no, why are you acting like a Tory, Bob? Screw you. You want a Tory? You got a flipping Tory. You got Mike Harris, who closed hospitals, and this is the result. This is the result. Years later, we're living in it, and nobody. And so, you know, what needs to happen is we need hospitals again. That's what we need. We need to spend the money, and nobody's thinking about it.
There's a whole. There's this argument that somehow, simply by changing, you know, the budget, simply by demanding body cameras, simply by implementing certain aspects of change, that there will be a large, I want to edit this out because I'm battling.
No, keep it in.
Keep it real.
Yeah.
Roll up that newspaper, smack them.
No. What I'm saying is that people will concentrate on certain aspects of the argument, right? The issue is huge and massive, and the roots of it cross all sections of our society. So recognizing that there are some, and I'm sorry, they're Band-Aids, some Band-Aid solutions like cameras, like lowering the budget of the police, does not get to the key issues. And you see that in that, I sent in a link to, what did they call them? This couple that some protesters came into this gated community. They passed by these people's mansion, and the guy came out with an AR-15 assault rifle, and the woman had a handgun, and they started screaming like the protesters were going to kill them when they were just passing by. They have since become key celebrities on the right, shouting about how their lives are at risk. These are looters. They were going to break into our house. They're doing this and that. So you can say all you want about body cameras, about, you know, a 10% budget reduction. There is huge support in Canada, in the States, for Native people being thrown into snowbanks and left to die, and people sitting on the necks of Black folk.
So, Louis, I just want to thank you this week for bringing forward my I fucking hate white people.
Right.
That's who it was going to be this week, was those two. But to their argument, Andrew, I believe the statistic is 20 times. In that if you and I are walking down the street, you are 20 times more likely than I, who is standing right beside you to be shot dead by the police.
Yeah.
And that is a harrowing statistic. That anyone should not be able to leave their house and not believe that they're going to be safe is horrible. And this is where we need accountability. And I certainly don't think that, Doug and Deborah holding up AR-15s is an answer either.
Somebody sent in a really heartbreaking story about Elijah McClain.
Yeah.
Who was this teen who was a black youth who apparently he had skin issues, so he had to wear clothing, right?
He had an anxiety issue. He had some mental health issues around being in crowds. Maybe he had a physical ailment as well.
Mm-hmm. And so he went in public, and some officers approached him because he was dancing or something?
No, there was a call made, and this is so often the case, and it's not discussed. Someone makes a call. He was listening to music on his headphones, and he was waving around to the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the police officers responded, and within a short time, he was dead.
Begging for his life, asking them to forgive him for his actions, which were basically, you're trying to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
Which becomes interesting. It's like, if you attack me, right, and try to put me in a chokehold, and I respond in a way that is a physical version of me saying, don't choke me,
right,
I'm not doing anything, and that becomes resisting arrest. I had a friend years ago who was stopped. He was stopped on the Don Valley Parkway with some friends, 3 friends, doing nothing. The cops pulled them out of the car, started questioning them. One guy was irritated and went, what are you doing this for? The cop pushed him against the car. The guy went, what are you doing? They were then charged with insulting a police officer. On the report, the police said that they were drunk driving, that one guy had a bottle of booze in his boot. He was wearing cowboy boots. Anyone who's worn cowboy boots knows how impossible that is.
Yeah.
They fought it. They fought the charges, and the two of them had to leave the city because the Toronto police would visit their home. They were living with their mother at the time, would visit their home and question their mother, right? Accuse them of all kinds of things. They were strip searched multiple times. They had to move out of the city and drop the investigation into the police. So, and that stuff goes on all the time.
Let me build on all 3 of your points, and I think all of them were good points, and I don't disagree with anybody. But it's interesting because they all come together, right? It's like you've got this white couple, and they decide they're going to take the law into their own hands. They bring out assault rifles, and they're just threatening to kill anyone, right? And so, we have this movement now where I guess the end goal, I guess it's sort of expected, but it's a little silly, I think, is to defund the police and the problem is that the police make too much money, which to me it's not really related to what's happening, but I'm like, fine. But then even if you do that, you have white couples on their own. If there's no police, they're just going to kill people. So you still have white people killing black people. It's just, now it's going to be citizens instead of police. So obviously the issues are way deeper. And so how do you solve this thing where, for whatever reason, white culture is partly about killing black people? Like, it just seems so normalized for pockets of Caucasian culture.
There's another point I think we have to make, which most people on the left avoid. and that is there is serious criminality due to poverty in the Black community. There is serious dysfunction due to poverty and the system of oppression that surrounds them. But you see the same traits around the world with any oppressed people. You see those traits in those people that now call themselves white, right? In their ancestral behavior, right? Coming to North America because one of your ancestors stole a loaf of bread, right? Because they were starving. And, situations where a whole class of people that had been marginalized because of the Industrial Revolution had become useless, useless to society, so they were shipped here.
Here's the thing. In the 1980s, Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney and Margaret Thatcher adhered to a movement of economic thought that came out of the Friedman School, Milton Friedman School, which basically, to oversimplify something that's very simple, but it was the trickle-down theory. It's the idea that you just cut taxes to the rich, make sure that everybody's really wealthy, and then the poor will be fine. And at the same time, you cut social spending. And that has decimated our society. And we are, again, living in the reverberations of that. We had this, what's the word, goat fucker named Mike Harris, who basically instituted workfare and, gave 3 strikes rule to schools. And, I don't want to go into a big, song and dance, my lefty socialist Marxist song and dance. But ultimately, you make a people desperate, they will do desperate things, Instead of making workfare, you should have made, you can put conditions on welfare, that's fine, but could put conditions on welfare that are based on education instead of getting work, because it put things on welfare. And it's also too, maybe we do need to experiment with just a minimum universal income. Maybe we need to experiment with and so there are certain things that were done to destroy the underclass and their ability to feed themselves. And so, gun crime rises, and then gun crime rises, so now you have to spend more money in the police. And ultimately, and I know I sound like a broken record, but you the money that you spend on social programs, on the money you spend on hospitals, the money you spend on all these other things, you won't need to spend as much money on the police, right?
This becomes really this shift after the fall of the wall, the Berlin Wall, the fall of communism. I think it was '89, something like that. When capitalists throughout the West started crowing that this is our time. Canada and so many, not so many nations in Europe, but at least in Canada, in the States, we moved from a culture of contribution and cooperation to a culture of competition. And I'm not saying that what existed before was great. It was horrific. if you were considered an outlier. But I remember before that was established in the early 60s, people with no legs selling pencils in the street. Social programs, the idea of cooperation and empathy and all the rest of it that are still, I'm not going to say necessarily a part of Canadian identity, but at that we were trying to instill that sense of identity, compassion, cooperation, compromise. These were values that I think mark a successful culture. If your culture is based on competition, then by definition, you are going to be a paranoid, fear-ridden culture. And I think that's a huge issue.
Absolutely.
I buy race as a construction of class distinctions. Like, I think it does answer a lot of questions, but at the same time, there are many stories of Black families moving into white neighborhoods who are at the same socioeconomic status and are banned, right? Are marginalized, are like, you could be a rich Black person in a white neighborhood. You could be the richest Black person in the white neighborhood.
We went through that.
You're still Black.
My family went through that.
Right?
That's literally the storyline of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
True. Yo, home, smell you later. Well, here's the thing. We really should address, however, one of the most oppressive white men of all time.
Dude, I'm right
about
here.
The police, but you know, I was told by my daughter, apparently Chris Nolan has banned chairs on sets. People are not allowed to sit down on a set. Who does he think he is? Oh my God.
If you got time to lean, you got time to do a scene. That's what that is.
That's insane.
Does anybody care? Like, I don't know. I don't even care like whether I have a, like, look, here's the thing. I mean, this is a big story. Apparently people are like really upset with Chris Nolan about not giving people chairs. Trust me, the big stars, they have chairs in their trailers.
Yeah.
You know? There are no chairs in the trailer.
Well, there's no way the unions are gonna let that happen. I mean, I'm just being an AD on set. If you didn't have chairs for the background, they would go to ACTRA and complain about set behavior. So they didn't get chairs, but they got a place to sit.
An interesting question, though, right? Because you can't be so rigid adhering to union protocols when the environment is so different now. Right? I mean,
I was going to say, like, what are we going to do now? Like, have you guys heard about what the rules are with filming and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. I sat through that seminar last week. Firstly, wouldn't you just love to see a non-union version of Inception?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Just how many boom mics are in shot?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How many little people are going to be used in every dream sequence? Like how many? Right?
Yeah.
Just picture Steve Buscemi's living in oblivion, and it will be that. Right?
The rules are so Byzantine because it's like you have union versus non-union. Union, which they have a set of regulations, and non-union, there's no regulations. But then you also have guidelines from the governments, right? So the Ontario government will like, this is how you do it. But then it's also like, if you're outside the GTA right now, you can have these guidelines, but depending on where you are, there are these guidelines. So you have like all these different rules, and then you'll have a Christopher Nolan who make his own rules on top of all the other rules. Like, no chairs. Forget white versus Black. Yeah. It's chairs that are the problem.
Yeah. So the outline of the of the majority of the rules is literally just taking the extension of what is in place right now governmentally and extending it into the workforce. Like wherever you're seeing regulations for the workforce, they're just adapting that to screenplays and screen work. And this is going to adhere because this goes beyond union legislation. Union, non-union work still have to adhere to all of these rules. And so it's going to be things like, yeah, you got to have social distancing right the way along. There's going to be temperature checks all the way along. There's going to be actors and everyone else bringing their own lunches. There's going to be like way more sort of like isolation. Maybe you're doing your own makeup now. Because everything needs to be sterilized afterwards. Like there's so many different protocols right now that are going along. I think in listening to this seminar, I was like, wow, there are nail salons in Kingston that are looser than this. And thankfully, because well, we saw what happened in Kingston, didn't we?
This goes back to what I was saying about the what the fuck moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how we're in this what the fuck moment, and people are just in a tizzy. Yeah, I said tizzy.
Okay.
Trying to figure out.
One question though, Lewis, which moment is the what the fuck moment?
Right.
At last count, there's at least 5 right now concurrently. It's crazy.
I meant the one that the industry cares about.
Okay.
Like, how are you going to do a love scene while being socially distanced?
Yeah.
That's one of the other things too. They were talking about like possibly quarantining both actors for 2 weeks and then doing love scenes.
You know, so
it's things like that.
I was taking an acting class, and a lot of acting classes have sort of like transferred their classes to Zoom. And I get it. The acting teachers is just trying to like, how can I keep my business going in a sort of socially responsible way? But then for me, I'm like, I get it, but then what the fuck is the value of learning how to act with another person over Zoom? Because you're not going to do that. How many times are you going to perform with somebody over a computer?
Yeah, but hold on a second, though. We are not in a place where we know where the industry is going to move, right? Like maybe that is the new wave of stars and actors who can actually translate those emotions on Zoom or a Zoom-like platform. I mean, I'm not saying I'll suck at it.
I know that when I go shopping right now, I am doing a lot of eye acting. There is a lot. And then when I got sunglasses on, these cheekbones become very animated. These are my money makers right here.
Well, okay, let me ask you a question. I mean, you're all professionals. We've been in this industry for more than 2 decades. So do you think that that's viable? Do you think that there's going to be this sort of influx of projects where, I mean, I will say from a producer standpoint, there are all these restrictions for crew. The safest way and the cheapest way is to remove the crew entirely and do your movie over Zoom, do your television show over Zoom. Like, do you think this is going to be a new way of making art?
You know what I was going to say, and I know this is going to sound inappropriate, but I think that the porn industry has been dealing with this for years. The porn industry has already dealt with like doing blood tests, testing for chlamydia, testing for AIDS, quarantining yourself, making sure that you don't have other sex partners before you do your scene. And when you're on set, there are certain regulations they have about condoms and all that stuff. So, and I think
make sure the pipeline to Romania is open so you can feed in more women as they die.
I think that to be very honest, like there are a number of people who work in the porn industry right now who probably are like, well, we've been doing this for years. Like, there are certain things. We have small crews. They have very small crews, and so they, there are certain things that we're just going to have to do. We're going to have to do blood tests. We're going to have to, not blood tests, or maybe we'll have to do blood tests to see how many antibodies you have for COVID. And maybe we'll have to
this becomes, so then now we're going to have a situation where those people that protested the closing, right, of industries are now going to have an influx of supporters who have been wiped out, like who have been marginalized as far as the industry, like they no longer have a position or an occupation because of stripped down sets. Right? So that's going to be a huge, and that's going to happen not only in our industry but across the board. So what happens if you don't have a minimum living wage in effect? What's going to be happening with all of these people that are basically sent to the margins?
Well, I'm an actor, so I don't care. I'll be fine. You need someone in front of the camera.
Andrew, there a few years ago, there was this thing that they were selling. They called it it was something like a FaceTime buddy or something like that, or FaceTime friend. And what it was something. It was a clamp that you put on the bottom, like the underneath side of your iPad, and it had a bracket. And in that bracket, you were able to fit a fleshlight. And that is the nearest I can think of now as to what the porn industry would be like over Zoom.
Mm,
That.
yeah.
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 Let me just think
people
about
who,
that for a
are
second.
in a long distance relationship.
I think, though, getting back to the point, though, that Andrew was so gracious as to us to the side. I think not only it's going to be interesting when you have people demanding the relaxation of these rules. You have more and more people dying and protesting that relaxing. You have people of color, especially Black folk and Native folk, saying, "Hey, stop killing us!" Like, there's a potential for a clusterfuck.
Oh,
I mean, it's already a clusterfuck. I don't even know what you call what's coming.
no, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's and to the point of the going back to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air argument. The reason that that you're seeing the the people who become through hard work and grit and are able to kind of get into the game themselves, and people of color who have been able to rise to a station along with their fellow white people in their own economic bracket, the reason they're shunned is because of the prejudice that remains within the downtrodden of the society. Who you look at the large amount of the people who are impoverished is going to be, I'm not saying there aren't white people there, but I'm saying the vast majority are people of color. And so because of that, it comes in with a whole bunch of, look at the lawlessness and that whole thing. But the second you rise up to the next level, suddenly your skin color kind of reminds everyone of what's down there. And that is the problem, right? It's the color, you would think in this capitalist society that green is the only color that matters, but it doesn't. Right.
But
so
you also have classism in the Black community, where when I was coming up, poor whites were vilified in the Black bourgeois community and the Black middle class community. They were like it, and it was a constant theme. Oh my God, they're just so lazy, right? They're stupid. They can't compete. They should just go off somewhere, run off a cliff, and drown themselves in their own stupid sorrow. It was incredibly dismissive. So it's not. And there are a lot of bourgeois Black folk, and Andrew, you've seen this as well, when out in public, older Black folk looking at younger Black folk in hip hop gear.
Why you wear your pants around your ankles? Son.
And just the disgust and anger on the faces of older Black folk looking at younger Black folk expressing themselves through their own experience, right? Their own cultural experience.
Oh God, the day that when I walked into I came home with dreadlocks, my mother, she was like, Lord have mercy. Why you dread up your hair? Lord have mercy. You would think you smoke ganja. What the hell? And I'm like, Mom, I'm just trying to get girls, Mom. Leave me alone.
And if you had, at this point, if you're a young Jamaican dude and you walk into your Nigerian girlfriend's household, Negro, please.
Yeah.
When I had my dreadlocks, there was no problem at all. No one
and you looked hot.
No one said shit.
I heard that from someone, from White Dreads, that said the early Picts before the Roman conquest had dreadlocks, and that is the culture that I am representing.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Sure.
Look, I will say we're in a time. I'm not sure if it's an unprecedented social change, but certainly it's the most social change, or the potential for it, that we've seen in quite a few decades. I mean, certainly, I'm 42. I've never seen this much potential change in this amount of time, right? But I am worried about social cohesion moving forward, because I don't see the film industry being the same. I don't see race relations being the same. I don't see politics being the same. I don't see restaurants being the same. I just think that like all the rules of society have shifted, and I'm like, how does this not make an indelible impact on people? Like, how do you not fear people now for the rest of your life?
Well, and also what's happening is that some very respected people are finding it hard to grow, like J.K. Rowling coming out against trans individuals. I did not see that coming. And apparently it's a thing in England. A lot of feminists are very anti-trans because they think it's white men trying to co-opt the feminist movement.
Yeah, that's I mean, the only argument that I have against trans women is in sporting competition, right? That if you transition from male to female, and that's gonna be a contentious one for a long time. Whether trans women can compete in sporting events, women's sporting events. I'm stepping out of that one. I ain't even involved. But anything else, I'm like, just shut the fuck up. You know, I mean, I get I get where people are coming from both sides. I walk, especially when I was younger.
So there are good people on both sides. Is that what you're saying? Oh, interesting. Okay, keep going.
So,
let's just put down some landmines here. Come along.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, keep walking forward, Lewis. Keep walking forward.
So I remember as a kid, I would walk through gazes of disgust, right? Like my presence caused a visceral reaction.
Yeah.
Right. And it's something that still happens.
In this room.
Yeah. Right now.
It's something that still happens, but I've built up a defense against it. Most gay people have gone through this. Aboriginal folks, there are a whole shit ton of folks that have gone through this experience. At the same time, I have started monitoring my reaction to other people, my levels of reverse disgust, right? The gaze of disgust. And just today, like all of a sudden, our green bin went missing. And I asked my neighbors, and my first thought was, oh, the Heartbreak Hotel's there. I bet they weren't even thinking and took my damn green bin. And then a neighbor is like, oh, I saw somebody, like a homeless guy, looking through the bins. Well, I wonder if he took it. And I'm like, you motherfucker. And I'm, oh, here I go. Here, you bourgeois fucking NIMBY shit. Right? So I am all sides of all arguments, and most people are.
Well, okay, so look, going back to the gender sexuality, I don't know if it's a debate or it's a question or it's an argument. It's an interesting issue because it's very complex. And it just seems like we're headed as a society where there seem to be a lot of people who don't want you to differentiate between men and women. It's like the idea that there are men and there are women is like antithetical to everything that's right. And look, I agree that everyone has equal value, regardless of your sexuality, your gender, variations there are so complex now. But at the same time, like I would caution people to destroy those barriers, right? Because I think especially when we talk about sports, I mean, the reason that they're there is that men are a lot bigger and constructed differently than women, right? So we could eradicate the distinction so that all men and women are treated the same, but you're going to have a disproportionate number of men in positions of power. And, you know, like it's the same with the bathroom issue. It's interesting stuff because you want to sort of equate people's value, but at the same time, it's really men committing most of the rapes and the sexual assaults. And so if you're kind of pretending that that's not happening, there's, you know, most men are really honorable people, but there's going to be a percentage of men and it's going to be like a fucking buffet for them, right?
I would never go with most men are honorable. Where the fuck did that come from?
I think that most trans women and trans men would agree that sex is and gender is a real difference, and that they were born of a certain gender and sorry, of a certain sex, and that that what they want is for their body to match their soul. And I would agree. I don't think trans people are trying to eradicate gender or trying to say that men and women are equal. I think actually they're saying quite the opposite, that they want to be able to actually be the person. They want their body to match who they are inside.
Sure.
And ultimately, who cares? Let them do that.
Yeah, I know.
It's like whatever. And
Jurgen Klopp, when the whole pandemic began, and Liverpool was at the top of the EPL, and it was pretty obvious they were going to win. Like, it had a substantial point win. And he was asked by the press, should they just be handed the title if it doesn't go forward? And they just recently won. Congratulations, Liverpool. They did it. You know, they brought back the league.
Yeah.
But he said, what a ludicrous question to ask at this point in time when people are losing their lives. Football is the most important of the least important things. And I would say that is true of all sports. If we're going to get our buns and knots about whether trans women can play in women's teams or should be, men's teams, or should be, creating another category of transgender for, for different categories of sport, I couldn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Right. The Bears are always going to suck. Lions aren't going to be able to fill a stadium, and Rangers are the best team in Scotland. Off.
Oh God, you're so
okay. I mean, there's the arguments for me are, well, there is no argument for me because I have no skin in the game. Right. It's not my argument to make. I am not going to discount. The only arguments I would discount on hearing them are arguments that dismiss people, right? That are harmful to people's psyche. That said, anything going at, there will always, it's what human beings do. We scream and shout and yell at each other, and then shit changes. I have seen so many gay friends of mine of my generation or a little bit younger, who are confused by the gay youth of today, right? They don't relate to them. They don't relate to their structures. They sound like my fucking grandmother talking to me or trying to understand my issues, right? So this shit is going to constantly go on, and the youth will drive change and transition.
It's an interesting time in our history because there's a sort of prevailing feminist ethos that really makes women believe that they are equal to men in every way, which is true morally and intellectually and societally,
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say in every way. I don't think that the necessarily.
Like this sports issue is interesting because I've seen online, like Joe Rogan talks about it a lot on his podcast, and there's a lot of women that make the argument that they could beat a man in these fights and all these things. And, I'm sure some of them can, but at the same time, look, let's compare the NBA and the WNBA. Like, I think there've been like a very small number of women in the history of the NBA, maybe like 10, 20 women who've been able to dunk in a game, and it's a major accomplishment for them to dunk. And it's like in every layup line warning up, there's like 50 dunks for an average NBA game, right? Like there's big physical differences between the genders. So you have to take that into account.
Well, here's the thing. That's true. And I'm not dismissing it. I actually totally agree with you. However, you have to add to that how many women are training, how many women choose it as a sport when they're young. That I bristle at the argument when people say black people can't play hockey, because my argument is, well, yeah, they do. There are black hockey players, and there could be more black hockey players if a number of things happen. First off, you need to get parents involved with associations where they can get the equipment, and you have to have youth hockey organizations that will actually admit more black players. And so when I know the argument you're making, which is fine, but you have to also keep in mind that every sport on the planet, there's a system that is in place to create players based on gender and race and economic social status.
Yeah, but I think you're talking about skills versus like physical distinctions, right? Because
but there's been a complete shift in the NBA, which has affected the size of NBA players. The 3-point rule has shifted the game totally away from huge, massive centers to like much smaller. So, and it's a false argument.
No, it's not. I've been a basketball writer for years, right? Like the thing is, for example, yes, you're right. See, I agree that women can shoot a 3-pointer probably as well as men, right? So skill, but what's happened in the NBA is now you have 7-footers shooting 3-pointers.
Yeah.
Because they're so big, it's like you can't guard them because now they're shooting, they're 2 feet behind the 3-point line, hitting a 3. So the height matters a lot in basketball. It's not just about skills. Like your height and your size make the impact.
But you know what? To get away from the whole sports thing, because I find it a false analogy.
And you don't know a lot about it. Come on, just admit it.
Sports are stupid to me, so I really don't care. But if it's that argument, and I heard this from a cop that was on the our SWAT team, the EFT, what are they called?
Sure, man. I don't know.
Okay, our version of special forces, SWAT teams.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was saying that, I never want to have a woman as a partner because if I get hit by a shell, how is she going to carry me, right? And I started thinking about, the argument that was made against Asian construction workers or Asian people in general, they're small, right? Mm-hmm. Asian men are small. They can't compete. It's like, maybe you get 2 to do the same job as one person. The job can get done, whether someone's Asian or woman. Like, there was a huge complaint when I was coming up when automatic transmissions came into the game, right? Guys were like, it's for the women, it's because you're dirty, and right? And who drives a stick now?
But I can speak to this, as someone who's half Chinese and also played basketball his whole life, right? It's an interesting issue because I'm a very skilled basketball player. I can do every single thing on the court. I can dribble both hands. I can no-look pass. I can do all the things. But I'll tell you, I've been playing basketball my whole life, and it's disproportionately black people playing. And I don't know why, but like they're just so skilled. They're smarter. The game,
because it's the way out.
But it's also the number of 6'5" and up black players that I have seen on the court versus the number of 6'5" Asian players. I don't know if I've ever, and I've played with a lot of Asians too. I don't know if I've ever seen a 6'5" Asian, and I've probably personally played with like 200 black guys who were over 6'5". Like it really does make an impact. If I was 6'5", like I'd have a legitimate chance to do something. I think in basketball, but at 5'8". It's like I would deke all these, I would do all the thing, and then the guy a foot taller than me would just swat my ball out of bounds.
Bobby, I was really hoping that my skin color would help me with basketball. It doesn't at all, and it's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about people that are in the top. You're making a comparison and leading it outwards to suggest that this is about men when the gene pool you're talking about is about 2% of the population of the world.
You know, and also too, I'll add to that. There are some female MMA fighters out there who could kick my ass, and
90% of the men in the world.
To Lewis's point, that the police officer that wouldn't want a female partner because she couldn't carry him out if he ever got hit by a shell. If he ever got teamed up with me, first of all, not an officer of the law. Secondly, I ain't picking your ass up. I'm not pulling my back and getting a hemorrhoid and sciatic. Fuck that.
Now, you know, even though Lewis was dismissive to you earlier, Todd, by stealing your "I hate white people" segment.
Yes, I was.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
Dismissive.
So dismissive.
Right.
I still have my "I love white people" segment, and it's just to say,
Oh, God.
and I love you to Carl Reiner, because Carl Reiner,
Is dead.
he just died recently, and I have very fond memories of watching like the Dick Van Dyke Show when I was a kid, and a lot of his comedy. He made many people smile and laugh with a wonderful sense of humor. So I just wanted to say, hey, Carl, wherever you are, you know, whatever form you are now in the universe, you know, hey, good night and good luck. So that's
Are you done?
Yes, I'm done.
Oh, good. Okay. Who was he again?
Oh my Lord. That's it. Bobby, you're too young to know who Carl Reiner is. It's okay. I'll tell you about the Dick.
I know I heard the name.
Right.
Anyway.
Ask your dad to ask your grandpa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thanks a lot. That's the upload show for this week. Make sure you subscribe and tell your friends. Click that like button, and we'll see you guys next week. Okay.
Yay.
Bye bye.